every front page we've talked about Angela Rayner. In opposition, she was the scourge of Conservatives when he got into trouble. When the Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi was in trouble over tax affairs, she said his position was untenable. That's when he was Conservative Party chairman. She said to the BBC, every pound of tax that's not delivered to the Exchequer damages our public services. And isn't the question, if you live by the sword, where does it leave you when it's
you have to fall on it?
Well, that's the question.
Well, look, I'm not going to sugar the pill. It's not good, and those set of front pages will be a huge headache, not just for Angela Rayner, but actually for the rest of the government as well. You know, Keir Starmer just this week was trying to do a big reset. We've had a summer where there's lots of speculation swirling about this upcoming budget in November, with an expectation that taxes will increase, and in fact, taxes around housing. There's been a lot of speculation about this. Of course, Angela Rayner is also the housing minister, so it's not a good look. Now, I mean, I've kind of got two views on this. I've got my kind of political commentator view on this, which is, of course, this is not, you know, good news for all the obvious reasons that your listeners will understand. I think she's done the right thing by now referring herself to this guy, Laurie Magnus, who is he's the ethics advisor. He advised Rishi Sunak. He's advising Keir Starmer. He will have to now look through all the evidence, and a lot of it will focus on this legal advice that she was given. She was saying, look, I was given this legal advice. It turned out to be wrong when I got better, higher quality legal advice.
Which she then said in an interview yesterday she sought because of the media reports, which I don't think feels that comfortable.
Well, look, he is going to have to look. It's not comfortable, and again, I'm not trying to come in here and spin this as like there's any kind of, you know, good news story in this or anything. It's very difficult for her. It's very difficult for the government. It's difficult for her personally, professionally. He will look into this now, and what's going to be critical is this advice that she got. And if he does find that she's broken the ministerial code as was found with Nadeem Zahawi, and as you said, Ed, you know, Angela Rayner was very vociferous in her attacking of others on this, although I think that the quantities of money are very different. On a human level, and as somebody who knows Angela Rayner, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for her, I feel really sorry for her, because I think in a sea of quite kind of samey politicians from the same kind of background, she stands out as somebody in politics who is vivid.
Yeah,
She's from a different background, and we want people like that in politics. But as you say, politics is the rough and tumble, and if you are the Deputy Prime Minister, housing is a huge issue for you. Housing is a big issue for people. Paying tax is a big issue for people.
And she had also had massive allegations against her, which she saw off on tax.
That's
this
right.
is the second
Exactly.
time.
Well, I mean, she was cleared of that, so let's see what happens.
I mean, having been cleared once, you don't really want to be going into...
No, and I think...
She was cleared,
there were two things.
She was.
I think you mentioned, and certainly Aisha did, when we were in government, there was nobody more vociferous and more outspoken about, you know, Nadeem Zahawi and others who had fallen short in terms of their standards. And now the boot's on the other foot, and she's trying to be all contrite and sorry. And I don't think it washes. I think people can see the hypocrisy.
Although people do know that when you're in opposition, you attack the government.
No, but you can't just shrug that off. I mean, it's serious politics. And, you know, she's one of the most senior cabinet ministers in the country. And on the stamp, everyone pays stamp duty. Everyone who buys...
Should we just be very clear about what the accusations are? Because I worry that people see headlines of escaping stamp duty. And it seems to relate to this trust, which, because of what's happened, she's been forced to reveal details about her son, which perhaps, you know, no parent would want to and would want to protect the picture of public life. So what is the nub of the accusation?
So the nub of the accusation is that when you buy a second home, so it's not your main home, it's a second home, you're liable to more stamp duty. And she, seeking advice, and we haven't seen the advice, as Aisha says, basically failed to pay the amount that she should pay.
Because she had the other home, as it were, not the one that she uses for, you know, time in London, but the other home was in a trust for her son.
No, but the rules are very clear.
I know, but I'm just trying to help people understand what is.
And you can look at that on the government website. You can see what the liability...
Even I tried, and I'm hopeless at these things.
And you can see how much... And she's a senior cabinet minister, and she must have known that anything she did in this area was going to have a lot of scrutiny. And she fell short. She admitted herself that she didn't pay the amount she should have paid.
I mean, we're in this unusual position compared to normal political scandals, where it's not going to be decided simply by the Prime Minister and, you know, the court of public opinion. You've got this independent advisor who is going to make the recommendation to the Prime Minister, appointed by the Conservatives, the ethics advisor. And, I mean, so there is one question, which is, did she kind of deliberately or, you know, did she ignore what she should have done and try to avoid tax? That's one allegation. There's a second, which the Tories are saying today, she's trying to avoid tax. There's a second question, which is, even if it wasn't on purpose, was it incompetent? Shouldn't she have tried harder to check this out? And then the third question was, which is, even if it was an inadvertent mistake, can the government cope with this degree of public anger and newspaper pressure? And I wonder, of those three, which is the one you think she's, in the end, going to be most vulnerable on?
Well, I mean, she's vulnerable on all of those things. I mean, ultimately, that is what this ethics advisor is going to look into. We have not seen all the advice that was published. And this is... Now, my understanding is that, you know, all of this would be... There'll be a paper trail of this, right? Because you don't do this stuff on WhatsApp or on the phone. So he will probably be able to get through this quite quickly in terms of looking at who said what when, and he will have to make a judgment. Did she have a curious enough mind in terms of, you know, did she ask the right questions? Did she reveal and disclose all the right information at the right time, that the reasonable kind of Deputy Prime Minister
but, you know, we're talking about stamp duty. We're not talking about some mysterious and complex tax. Everyone pays it. Everyone who buys property has to pay it. But even tax experts like Dan Needle have kind of said, look, what makes her situation unusual, and I think it is important to say this to the listeners. I know everyone is like, everybody's the same and this is terrible. I'm not saying this is a good look for 1 minute. The tax allegations with Nadeem Zahawi, he was talking about money from his company, YouGov, and he was made Chancellor and did not declare at the time that he was being investigated by HMRC. That is quite a big thing, and that's about profit. Hang on, just let me finish, which is one point really quick, and then I promise I will let you speak. But this was about... His thing was about a bit... What I'm about to say is not that funny, right? She's about a disabled child, OK? This is something... We talk a lot about why do we not have more normal people in politics and the struggles that everyday people... Most people will not be in the position that Nadeem Zahawi was in, where he founded a company called YouGov. It made a lot of money. And I think the amount of money, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he paid back was like 5 million. It was in that zone of 5 million. That is a lot of money. We're talking about a woman who went through a divorce with a disabled child who's got such severe difficulties that they needed to have some insurance policy in case she's not around when he turns 18.
And Ed Davey has come out and said that, hasn't he?
So I mean, and I know this is not a good look, but the idea that, you know, some people have been like, oh, yeah, it's just all about this big profit thing. It isn't a good look, but there is a very complicated family thing in the middle.
Aisha, I think the problem is that people have absolute empathy with that. I'm sure they will, and should do, frankly, because it's a huge challenge. The problem is that people everywhere are trying to look after their children, regardless of the exceptional circumstances she's in. And the impression it gives is, well, how come you found a way around it when you're expecting me not to?
And I think that's the question.
Forgive me, and you said exactly the right thing. She said, forget about the amounts. She said that any tax that is owed the Treasury, the government, essentially, and that isn't paid, damages our public services. She was the one who said that. And she's done exactly the same thing. I agree the quantities are very different, but the rules were the rules. She's one of the top 2 or 3 politicians in the government. and she should follow those rules. And the fact that she was so contrite yesterday shows that she knows that.
But this is why I think, in the end, the politics is going to be the hardest thing for her.
Sure.
I actually think when we find out about this, Kwasi, I think you might turn out to be wrong. I think that it will turn out to be very complicated situation rather than simple. Because I think the problem is that there is a trust for the beneficiary of the disabled son.
Yeah.
She was selling the property to that trust. So she thought her only property, her only property, was going to be the Hove one. But because of complexities of trust law, it turns out, because it may turn out to be that he's a minor, I'm not exactly sure how this will work, but that her name was still attached to the trust, and therefore it was more complicated than simply Hove being her first property. And therefore the stamp duty, I think the stamp duty rules will turn out to be contentious and complicated. The problem is, independent of all of that, if you're the Deputy Prime Minister and the Housing Minister, and you've already been through the rigour once on tax, you would think you would have gone to the top tax advisor in the first place.
It'll be the headline.
And therefore the mistake doesn't look good at all.
But you've hit the nail on the head, and I'm glad you clarified what Kwasi was saying, that this is very simple. It's not very simple.
It's not going to be simple.
And actually, if anything, it will put some pressure. If the Chancellor had been thinking about doing something on tax, on stamp duty at the budget, this probably makes it all the more difficult, because one of the arguments made by experts is that the whole system is very, very complicated, and this particular bit is complicated as well.
But you see, the thing is...
However, it does come down to, what the ethics advisor finds.
That's right.
And none of us know that right now. None of us know that. But it may well be that it's bad, right? It may well be, actually, that she did everything that someone in her position did reasonably. But it will be, as you say, it's two things. It's the court of public opinion right now, when people are struggling and there's a budget coming up. But secondly, and this is the other thing, and we've probably done crisis management, sometimes it's not the original thing that gets you, it's if there's been any cover-up. And I think the thing that her and her team will be doing...
Last week, her office said there's nothing to hide.
That's one thing you have to be always careful of. And whenever I advise
people... feel that before saying that going to that extra person to get information would have been a wise move. What does the Prime Minister do?
Politically, I think you're right. I think there will be complexities. But in terms of what people are listening and what they're hearing, they will boil it down to that's one rule for them and one rule for us.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. And that's very simple to understand, and that's the problem. For the Prime Minister...
who said he was proud to be sitting alongside her yesterday. You wonder how long that pride...
It's very difficult, because he's obviously clinging onto her for dear life. I think politically, if she's on the backbenches, that's a big problem for him, because she's the deputy leader.
So if he removes her as Housing Minister, removes her as Deputy Prime Minister, but she stays on the backbenches.
She stays on the backbenches. She's still the deputy leader, as I understand, in the Labour constitution.
Yeah.
And she can pretty much say whatever she wants. When you're a backbencher, you're not bound by
I think it depends upon this independent report. If the independent report says, actually, she behaved in a reasonable way and Keir Starmer has taken some preemptory action in order to sack her, he's in huge trouble. That's why he has to kind of wait to see.
Of course you have to wait to see. And I was reading back through all the Nadeem Zahawi stuff, and interestingly, Michael Gove was on record at the time saying, look, we have got to let this process run its course. We have to let the ethics advisor... Because a lot of people...
I'm not sure Angela Rayner was agreeing with that at the time.
No, but a lot of Conservatives... there were some Conservatives saying to Rishi Sunak, dump him now. The longer you keep Nadeem Zahawi... Now, he did in the end. But I'm just saying, at the time, people like Michael Gove were saying, look, there's a process, we have an ethics advisor, let this guy do his work, and then we'll see. But the other thing I just want to say is... there will be loads of people yelling at the TV right now, going, oh, they're all the same and one rule for them. I get that. I am not in denial about that.
I'm afraid that's what people are going to say.
There are also other people who will look at this and think, do you know, the main thing that's affecting me right now is the cost of living and actually trying to, get houses built so my son or daughter can actually get on the housing ladder. And I think... I understand that there's a lot of interest in the story. I am not denying that, but there will also be a lot of people who do really like Angela Rayner, who think she is a working-class girl done good in a very middle-class world of politics, which doesn't actually have that many people from her background.
No, I see that, but I just
rules.
think the problem is that they're not feeling the benefit on the economy yet either. That's the problem.
And
that will take time.
You mentioned the cost
I know, but you're talking take time, and in that vacuum...
I just want to say one thing. Two things that Angela Rayner does deserve credit for. She has been the one person who is actually... Well, not the one that... She's been a real achiever. Like, this employment rights bill will make a difference to so many low-paid...
about her wider career.
I know, but we are just making the point about actually
now.
what she's doing to benefit people in the country. You know, we were at a reception the other night where a shop worker was talking about the absolutely horrific times they are facing right now because of being abused at work, not getting enough sick pay. They were saying this employment rights bill will be such a benefit to them. That's something that Angela Rayner has fought for. House building. She's presiding over a record house building
This is not a catalogue of her
programme.
great successes. This is about ethics, this is about responsibility, this is about following rules. That's what this is about. It's not about her brilliant career up to now.
But you look at things in the round, Kwasi, right? And you can look at individual things and you look at the effect that things had, like your misdemeanor. I mean, you didn't do anything wrong personally, but the mistakes you made had a massive...
I lost my job.
No, I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about the effect on the public. Your mistakes cost people lots of money with their mortgages.
I like the way you bring me into this. I mean,
no, we're talking about
Angela Rayner,
about the consequences
and we're talking about the fact that she howled down the Conservatives.
She made a mistake.
She's now made a mistake.
And it may well cost her dearly. You made some mistakes, and it cost you dearly because you lost your job. It also cost people with their mortgages.
OK, look, so I know you're trying to bring everything back to me, but with Angela Rayner, as you say, I think I agree with you, actually. The ethics advisor has a job, and now that she's referred herself, and that was clever, because she referred herself to it, it's bought her more time. Now, if he decides, like he did with Dominic Raab, and particularly with Nadeem Zahawi, that she's fallen foul of what we call the ministerial code, how ministers should behave, she's done. It's over. My issue is that even if let's say he says everything was fine, everything was tickety-boo, if she stays within the government, she will become a symbol of some of the things which have gone wrong with the government, in that the Labour government came in, said they were going to clean up the House, they were going to act differently, and they've got ministers who are not following the rules and somehow can keep their jobs.
OK, well,
and the public would have a problem with that.
Just remember, though, under Boris Johnson, Priti Patel was investigated by the then ethics advisor.
Yeah.
She was found guilty. She kept her job and they got rid of the ethics advisor.
Yeah, but that was, what, 5 years ago?
Still, I know, but you...
I mean...
You just set out...
As you know...
Hang on, you literally just set out why it would be terrible if the ethics advisor ruled against her and she kept her job.
Because there's a precedent.
But that happened with Priti Patel.
But then after that, you will remember that Nadeem Zahawi was referred to the ethics advisor, as was Dominic Raab. And when the ethics advisor came back with his decision, there was... I'm not sure
that the Boris Johnson approach to ethics advisors was questionable.
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying. And the point is, under the previous Conservative administration, they had an ethics advisor who found a cabinet minister in
and they were sacked.
And then he got sacked.
They were sacked.
And then...
So was Boris Johnson.
And then Boris Johnson didn't have an ethics advisor for a long time.
Can I just move slightly on, but staying in the same realm for a second? Aisha was actually sort of making a rather similar argument to Kemi Badenoch and Downing Street yesterday, although, by the way, Kemi Badenoch went out afterwards and said she must resign, which was that Kemi Badenoch didn't really ask questions about this properly in the Prime Minister's questions. And her advisers said that is because, I haven't got the exact quote in front of me, but it's not about Westminster insider, the knockabout of Westminster politics. This is about the things people really care about, cost of living and the economy. And that's, I mean, it was quite a strange judgment at the moment when the government is at its weakest. Kemi Badenoch took her eye.
So I think and we've seen other leaders do this. Some leaders are very quick on their feet in PMQs.
Isn't that what you have to do to become a leader?
No, you don't. You don't
have to be quick.
You know, William Hague was very brilliant at PMQs, and he failed as a leader of the opposition.
Wasn't that quick on his feet in PMQs.
Well, he wasn't good in any many respects.
So where are you putting Kemi Badenoch in the William Hague, Jeremy Corbyn?
I think she can be a good leader, but she's not the quickest on her feet. And that was demonstrated yesterday, because clearly this issue had bubbled up and she was still sticking to her script. And I've seen that happen a lot. Doesn't mean that they're bad politicians. It just means in the arena of PMQs, they're not very quick on their feet.
Around Westminster yesterday, so as somebody who used to advise people on PMQs, I've written a book on PMQs. I love PMQs. I'm a great student of the history of PMQs. This PMQs yesterday will go down as one of the biggest turkeys for a leader of the opposition. There's a thing in PMQs which is like the open goal, and it's in the morning when you're in the leader of the opposition's office, you're prepping for prime ministers, and sometimes a gift falls in your lap. And that gift yesterday was this scandal around that. And there was the open goal. There was the open goal, and she was basically, she'd locked herself in the loo in the changing room.
You know, I look
and
back.
All around Parliament yesterday, even Conservative MPs were saying that was a stinker. OK,
look, I look back. Keir Starmer, as leader of the opposition, things didn't go well for him. At the end, he came good. But I remember many times against Boris Johnson, we thought, OK, Boris is finished. All the leader of the opposition has to do is, as you say, you know, kick the ball into the open goal. And they didn't manage to do that. And that often happens. And I'm afraid yesterday, she didn't. Are
you optimistic that things can come good for Kemi Badenoch?
Look, I think a week is a long time in politics. I remember...
That wasn't really an answer to the question.
No, but things can change. Look, there's no question that things are in a bad position.
Are you optimistic that things can come good?
I think they can come good, absolutely.
Will they?
I don't know. Well, you need a crystal ball. I don't make...
That's what you're here for now.
I don't make predictions.
You're here for your crystal ball.
What
does your crystal ball tell us?
And analysis. I'm not here to predict the future. I mean...
you can give us your insight.
I think the maximum pressure for her will be at the local elections next year. Let's see what happens.
Well, I did a breakfast event with Michael Gove yesterday, and it was very interesting. I mean, you know, even he sort of conceded that things were going really badly, and that, you know, he was careful about sort of what he said. But
can you remember a time in British politics where things were going really badly for both the government and the opposition? It's quite unusual, this, isn't it? Normally it's one or the other, but actually both of them are really struggling.
Well, you've got a third party, an insurgent third party in reform. We haven't seen that before.
But we also have, I think, the fracturing of the two-party system in the United Kingdom, because we talk a lot about reform, but also look at what's happening on the left. I think the election of Zach Polansky could be quite consequential, particularly if there's some kind of alignment between this new Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana movement, the Gaza independence, this new sort of green movement under Zach Polansky. That is very interesting to look at.
So I remember the 2017 election, and 82% of the voters voted either Labour or Conservative. That was the Corbyn surge in 2017. It wasn't that long ago.
In the polls, it's now... What? 35?
It's about 40%, if that.
35, 40%. That's an amazing change.
And that's a complete... You know, that's only over 8 years.
And, you know, if you get to the next general election and you've got the three big parties, and we'll include Reform as one of the three big parties, and they're all hovering around the same sort of level, the next election essentially becomes a slot machine about who could win.
But that's the system we've got. I mean, that's the first past the post system that, you know, many of us, including myself, have defended. But it's never really seen, not for many, many years, a situation like this.
You mentioned Reform. Its leader, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Nigel Farage.
Who's he?
Yeah, exactly. Was in Washington and got a kind of a turning over by a Democrat congressman, saying he's a Putin-loving, free speech imposter and Trump sycophant. And this is because Nigel Farage likened Britain to North Korea in a speech about free speech. He then got a bit of a turning over as well, later being questioned when they said, well, how come he was accused of preventing some people coming to his press conferences, preventing some members. I think we can actually hear what he had to say. Let's have a look. I mean, I think he was referring to One Council, Nottingham Post, the reform contingency there preventing it, which I suppose isn't Nigel Farage. But he was it's the party, isn't it? And in the same way, I have to deal with it. What do you make of that?
So, look, I think he's a great showman, so he loved being at the centre of attention. But the problem with that was that he did get, he got grilled by the Democrat congressman, I think it was. But the broader point about the free speech, and we saw this thing with Graham Linehan, I mean, that's a serious thing that a lot of people are concerned about. And I was very struck with the comedian, Graham Linehan, I think he's called, that even the Prime Minister and the Met,
Well, Sir Mark Rowley has come out and
Yes, Sir
said
Mark.
that police shouldn't be expected to police, you know, toxic issues.
That's right.
I think he's
But-
actually saying something slightly different from that, which is these police officers erect Mark Linehan for a tweet which is aggressive, but actually...
Five armed officers.
But it's supposed to be comic. I bet you within the Met there would have been senior people saying, what were they doing? Whoever made this decision. However...
It was absolutely ridiculous.
However,
It was ridiculous.
Downing Street then says the Met should be concentrating on tackling proper crime.
Yeah.
Mark Rowley turns around and says, guys, you make the law. You write the law in a way which makes our officers feel that's what they've got to do. We have to do it.
know,
And if you want to change the law...
But I agree with
the law.
you.
And he's right about that.
I just want to say one on that, right?
Isn't he right about that?
I think that... Well, I just want to say one thing about... First of all, about the Farage thing being at the... Farage thought he was going to go to this hearing... And he thought he was going to have... Do you remember many years ago, George Garraway went and did a hearing, and he did a... You know, I cannot stand George Garraway.
Yeah, he did
put
a
in a
good
great
job.
performance.
Yeah.
It was like Rumble in the Jungle kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
That's what Farage thought he was going to do. He got utterly kebabbed by these
I don't
guys.
think he did.
And
I think...
you've had your say. Let me have
You've
my
had
say.
tons of your say.
Have I spoken about Nigel Farage yet?
No, let's speak.
Okay,
Please,
fine.
you know,
Yeah, I like
please,
to
you
speak.
have a go.
Thank
You have a go.
Thank you so much, kind sir. Thank you.
It's kind of around 50-50, but maybe tilting
Edging towards
way.
Aisha.
Shall I just zip up for the rest of
No,
the
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
So
You want to hear what you think about Mark Rowley?
No, but what I... but you talked about Nigel Farage. I thought with the other clip, which wasn't played, which is brilliant, which is so important... Nigel Farage talks so much about free speech. He also talked a lot about the grooming gangs, rightly so, a terrible, terrible thing, and the government should have gone quicker to have a statutory inquiry into this. Yet, when he was asked, do you support free speech and openness, do you think the Epstein files should be released? Nothing to say on that. He was very weak on that, right?
I agree, he was
very, very weak
because he was off to see Donald Trump.
Exactly. So come on. Now, in terms of the Graham Linehan thing, I think it's utterly ridiculous that 5 police officers turned up. As somebody who does
but that's
a lot
because
of...
it was the airport.
Yes, but to your point, Ed, as somebody who works a lot with the sector in terms of violence against women and girls, there's lots of times when women reach out for help from the police and it is clearly in the law that the police should come and help them and they don't get the help they need, right? That is in statute. So it's not right for Mark Rowley to suddenly, we're completely impotent on this. We just have to follow every letter of the law. You make operational decisions. And remember, the Home Secretary, and you'll know this, being married to Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary does not interfere with operational decisions of the police. They use their own judgment. And they pick and choose. And now there will be a big inquiry in the Met into why these idiots decided to turn up.
But
there'll be a lot of...
we are out of time, but for a lot of transgender people, that tweet would have been offensive.
Yeah, but come on, Kate. I'm very moderate on this. That was ridiculous. Because, by the way, you go down to your local co-op and there are people shoplifting, and that's against law, and they call the police and no one turns up.
So your question about the Prime Minister, I think the Prime Minister was right on this. I think Mark Rowley... Because you have to use operational judgment. It's not as if everything's written in the law. You've got to make a choice.
So Mark Rowley was being defensive.
Yeah, I think he was.
OK. You're back, and I can't wait.
Welcome so lovely.
So lovely to see you. Yeah, definitely. The rain's coming down and you're fighting form. Thank you very much, both of you.
I mean, I think they're getting increasingly feisty together.
I think so, don't you?
It's
Oh, very
Really, your show. I mean, yeah, exactly.
It's really getting going.